It's the Poojie Podcast, proudly sponsored by Cimarron Golf Club. What is going on, Pooch Crew? Thank you for being here on this beautiful Tuesday. Maybe you're listening on a Wednesday, I don't know. But wherever you're listening, however you're listening, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeart, wherever you're at watching, listening, thank you for tuning into episode 80 of the podcast. This is a great episode for a few reasons. Not only do we have our first guest ever on the podcast, but we're also talking a topic that not many people really necessarily care about, and for a decent reason. So I want this guy to sell me and sell the listeners and the viewers on why this topic needs to be discussed more here in the United States. And if you're watching, you can already tell behind me, the U.S. men's soccer team has failed to qualify for the third consecutive time. And in my ignorant sports fan opinion, where I think the U.S. men's national team should be the greatest of all time in any sport, including curling, which they won the gold medal in. It's an ice sport, and they beat Canada, and they beat Sweden. And here we're talking about soccer. We're talking football, the actual football. Kyle Vrban, jump on in here. Sorry I got heated there for a second, but jump in here. You're looking good in your Orlando City merch.
Thanks, man. Hey, every reason to be heated, though. There is literally every reason to be upset with us missing out on the third qualifier in a row for the Olympics here. The Olympics, for those of you that don't know, is just the U23. So that means any player that's 23 years old and younger. These are all the college age guys. And if you're going off of like Olympic standards in general, the U.S. should have theoretically the best athletes around the world. I think we've proven that in a lot of different sports. But for some reason, we, for the life of us, cannot put together a winning team for this. And it doesn't make any sense because the senior team is basically solely comprised of guys under 23 years old right now. So you're going to tell me that with the qualifiers for the regular World Cup for 2022 not starting until September, you're going to tell me we couldn't have used half those guys on this Olympic team to actually get us some tangible soccer silverware for once? You can't convince me that with all of the talent and all these younger guys that are now playing for Barcelona, for like, Juventus, all these top teams, man, we have the talent. We have the guys there. But for some reason, we just don't use them. We don't put it together. And it's frustrating, exactly like you said.
It's sad, man. It's sad because I'm a sports fan at heart. That's why I do this podcast. I actually did an interview earlier today. Someone asked me, what sports do you focus on? And I said, if it's on the planet Earth, we talk about it more than likely, whether it's F1, MMA, NASCAR, and soccer. It doesn't matter what it is. So I want to root. I want to be a fan. I'm watching these goals happen behind me. I'm watching young Landon Donovan. I'm watching young, Michael Bradley. I know these names. I think part of it is I'm a sports fan. I don't know any of these guys. The marketing is not there. It's not easy to market for casual fans. And even my listeners listening to the Poojie Podcast, thank you again for being here, might not even necessarily care about soccer, but stay hooked to this episode because Kyle Vrban is bringing us the heat. He is frustrated at the U.S. men's soccer team. Go for it, Vrban.
That's what I'm saying, man. And so I know we've talked about it before, but there's something so important about that World Cup cycle. The U.S. soccer base grows exponentially whenever we have a World Cup because there's something awesome and there's something just like emotional about being able to root for your country. So that's something that we've discussed before here. There's another level to it. If you can be connected to a club and you can be connected to a region, but there's a completely different type of emotion attached to it when you're rooting for your country. So whenever we missed out on that 2018 World Cup by like a horrible game against Trinidad and Tobago, which was completely inexcusable, honestly, the fact that we couldn't put together at least a goal out of that situation, I still lose sleep because of that. Like, I wish the American people would honestly just really give soccer a chance, because here's my pitch, at least for soccer in general. And then a little bit later on, I'll try to convince you for Orlando City specific. But think of it this way. How much time do you spend watching commercials when you're watching a football game, a regular football game?
Probably an hour and a half.
And how much of that tangible time, granted, the play time is exciting when it is going on, but how much would you say is actually you're watching the play happen?
9 minutes.
Exactly. So if there's one thing I will say, a lot of people, they watch soccer, they see one guy fall down and he maybe stay down for a couple seconds and then they turn it off because they get frustrated. we have 45 minutes of uninterrupted action, man. It's 45 minutes, a 15-minute halftime. That's the only time you're getting commercials. So if that's the time you want to go up and, grab a beer, grab your food, you go for it. But when you come back to your seat, you got another 45 minutes of straight action, and then you're going home. It's the one sport you can count on 100% of the time to finish on time. There's a couple minutes of leeway there, but ultimately, with the amount of action that's happening in the game, like, I just don't understand the comparison. I genuinely think all the people that have roomed with me too, Nick Brown, Luke, all you guys, I know, and Tichy can attest to this. If you guys watch these games, you will start liking the players. You'll start rooting for people, and you'll actually enjoy it. I guarantee you.
And I'm with you on that 100%. I think first of all, baseball is obviously too long of a game. Basketball has some theatrics and entertainment, so people don't really pay attention to that being a 2.5-hour game. Football, people just love that sport. It's never going to change. But with soccer, do you think? All right, here's my question to you. Do you think the lack of appreciation for soccer in America stems from a saturation of sports domestically, or do you think it stems from there not being good quality soccer to watch at the national level? What is it? Is it I don't want to get into soccer because my national team's not good? Or is it I don't want to get into soccer because I'd rather watch this sport, and this sport, and I just simply don't have enough time?
I honestly think it has a lot to do with the person's perception. If you grew up on baseball and football and all this other stuff, you were kind of taught like soccer's not really it's a secondary sport. It's a foreign sport. So like, I think the stigma around it more than anything is what keeps people from watching it. And I know the main concern is, oh, they're flopping all over the place and diving. I don't know about you guys, but I've watched a lot of basketball games where people are flopping all over the place too. But the difference is for soccer, if you're running for 45 minutes straight and you get knocked down on the ground, I'd probably want to take a couple seconds to wait to get back up too, because they're not going to cut to a commercial break. They're going to show me laying on the ground that entire time. So obviously it's going to be a little bit more, transparent when you see that. So yeah, I get the frustration, but ultimately I do see what you're saying. Like if you're not supporting, the team that is near you or the national team, then there's not as much of a connection. That's why, unfortunately, a lot of American fans turn to the Premier League. They turn to the European leagues because they want to see the top level of soccer if they are going to watch soccer. So I get that. I totally get it.
Yeah. And I mean, we talk about the third straight cycle of them missing the Olympics. They've been in the World Cup.
It's embarrassing.
And, they lose 2-1 to Honduras, more like horrendous, because that was just inexcusable losing in that fashion. You have the talent, you have, Nike is like whatever the soccer brand of the nation. Like Nike is like the global sports icon. You see that swoosh and they're right here in America. They're on the jerseys. They're the biggest sponsor, and you can't even get the best athletes for that sport. You can't even outfit the best athletes with that gear. It's a little bit embarrassing, in my opinion, when you look at the grand scheme of things, how we can find the best athletes at other sports, but then when it comes to soccer, we can't retain them domestically here on U.S. soil. It's sad, and people want to give me shit for rooting for Colombia because my girlfriend's Colombian. Well, all right, you want me to root for the U.S. in the Olympics? All right, well, now I can't. So there you go. F off. Like, I got no one to root for because my national team can't even make it there, and they're letting me down.
Yeah,
they're letting me down.
Dude, there's a reason that all of the talented players in the United States go to play in Europe, because we just do not have the system set up right now. We don't have the infrastructure. The coaches are not here. Like, you look at the coach for the U23 national team. I know that, like, from being an Orlando City, pseudo fan, you may recognize the name Jason Christ. This is a guy who failed upwards almost at every position. So he essentially got fired at NYCFC, came down to Orlando City to take over the project. We were like last place in the league. He got fired, somehow found his way into the U23 national team, and now fails to qualify here. So I can't say from the people who have watched his career that was a shock, but it's still, you think that with the talent available, it shouldn't matter who's coaching them. We should be able to get it done no matter what. But it goes to show it really, like, you need that leadership from the top down, and it just isn't there right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, so you bring up Orlando City there, you bring up Jason Christ, a name I'm extremely familiar with from my time working there as a fan ambassador, and then, kind of staying in Orlando, watching as a fan, trying to support. We saw them transition from what's the minor league system?
The USL, yeah.
The USL, they go from the USL into the MLS, pretty much the soccer capital of the South. Then Atlanta comes along. Now we have Miami. So the sport is definitely growing as far as teams go. If only we could get it to grow as far as talent goes, because there's nothing worse than an overpopulated sport with not enough talent. I think the NHL went through a period of that. The NBA went through a period of that. Why have so many teams if there's not enough talent to even make it competitive from one team to the next? If all the talent's going to be on one team, it doesn't make too much sense. But I guess they're trying to grow it demographically based on region. Say, hey, let's get these people in the Southeast onto soccer. Let's get Miami a team. Let's get Atlanta a team. So
well, that's why you're seeing a lot of celebrities get involved with these teams, because they're really trying to grow it around the United States. And to be fair, where we were 10 years ago to now, night and day difference. So, I mean, it is getting there, but it's just a slow process. And like I mentioned, every time we miss a World Cup cycle, an Olympic cycle, we're missing out on that many more generational athletes that are now going to pick another sport because they didn't grow up picking soccer. Because honestly, the boost that we get in not only fandom, but just amount of youth players playing after every World Cup cycle, just because, again, you're seeing it on the TV. You see people that you want to aspire to be when you grow up. And we have those guys on the team. We have Christian Pulisic, who's starting for Chelsea in the English Premier League, something I never thought I'd be able to say. We have Weston McKennie in midfield playing next to Ronaldo. We've got Serginho Dest at right back for Barcelona, hugging Lionel Messi when he scores a goal on the weekend. These are things that we have never, as U.S. soccer fans, we would have never dreamed of in the past 20 years. And still somehow, we're still finding the struggles on the national team. So,
and are those guys they're playing for and they're playing internationally, are those guys that still play on the U.S. men's national team?
Yeah, and that's the thing I want to make clear is that no matter where you play, if you are a U.S. international, you have the option to play for the U.S. So if your parents are dual nationality, I think you have the choice of either. But once you play a couple games for the senior team, you become cap tied, is what they called it, to that national team. So we've seen players switch back and forth, but for the U.S., that's why it's all the more crucial that we capitalize on the guys that we do have, because we haven't had that talent pool. This is the first time that we're actually seeing not only a full starting 11 that's playing in Europe, but a whole bench as well. These are all talented guys that are all between the ages of 17 and 25. We have a golden generation right now and a chance. You will hear some of these guys talking on the senior team. Obviously, the disappointment for the U23s, we'll kind of separate that for right now. But for the main senior team, these guys believe that they can make a run. Obviously, the qualifiers come first this fall. But I mean, these guys have high hopes, and they should, because of the talent that they have. I don't see why, if you keep this team together for the next 4 to 8 years, which is definitely possible with the ages of all of them, this is a generational team. So, I mean, we just got to see if they can put it together.
And you mentioned something there, which I'm glad you did. I don't think a lot of people realize at the soccer level, there are different variations of the national team, whether it's the senior team, as you called it, and then the U23 team. In soccer, all the way down, into Europe, all the way down to, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds in the farm systems and in, the developmental leagues and stuff. So soccer is a lot like baseball in the way that it has depths to it. It's not just the team on the surface. There is depth to it. I don't want people out there to think the U.S. men's national senior team failed to qualify. I hope we don't see that day. This was the U23 team, which there's still no excuse for. You should be capable of beating Honduras and, teams like that.
We have arguably one of the easiest qualifying schedules of any of the regions around the world. So if we can't beat the main guys that we have to worry about are typically Canada and Mexico, if we can't beat those two teams or at least qualify alongside of them, then there's a big issue there.
So I have a question for you then. Do you think this is, how do I say this? Do you think this is like when the Golden State Warriors were winning 72 games in a year? Do you think this is just a situation where the U.S. U23 team was getting every team's best effort because they knew it was the United States? Is there that type of stigma at soccer that people just want to put the United States in their place and just beat the United States because it's the United States?
I would definitely say, especially in the CONCACAF qualifying, if we're playing against Honduras or any of these other teams, Mexico for sure. These are all rivalry matches for these people. These guys have in World Cup qualifying for regular teams have beaten these guys regularly. So, I mean, anytime they get a chance to really stick it to us, they're going to take it. But again, like I mentioned, at the end of the day, they could give us their best effort. it still should be nowhere close considering the guys that we have on the team. When the team value like of the players is over like $300+ million, like overall, like there's just no excuse.
100%. Yeah, no, that last part is key. The best effort from a tier C team should never be able to beat even a medium effort from the United States U23 team. So it's sad. You talk about the surge of athletes that we're missing out on, of kids, you know, not maybe getting into soccer specifically because the national team might not be good. You look at golf, right? You look at what happened with Tiger Woods back in the 2000s, and people talk so much about how he is now playing against the competition that he created, right? And the kid that was sitting on the couch when he was 8 years old watching Tiger Woods in 2003 just destroy all these tournaments and these majors and win everything. You know, now that kid's 25 years old, some 17 years later, that kid's now on the PGA Tour because of the motivation to get out and practice and play. And even now, we just had the Masters finish on Sunday. The golf courses are going to be flooded for the next 2 weeks of people just with that Masters feeling, that, you know, that fever of just wanting to get out and play because they've seen it. And that's just to your point of these kids, these people, you know, aren't going to care about getting out to play soccer if they're not seeing a quality product on the screen. But enough about the U.S. men's national team. Let's get into some MLS talk real quick. Give me Orlando City. Tell me what's going on in the world of the MLS. I know there's some big weeks coming up.
Oh, yeah. Well, first off, we got opening weekend this weekend on Saturday at 3 o'clock. We're playing Atlanta United, a rivalry match in the home opener. So this is honestly, like, guys, if you're in the Jacksonville, Orlando area, or even in Florida in general, and you're thinking about going between Inter Miami or just want a team to root for, now is the time to jump on the bandwagon. This is a team that completely rebuilt last year, had a new coach, new training facility and everything, and turned a last place team into a top 4 finishing team. So we just actually qualified for like an entirely different league cup because of how well we did last year, because we had like the top 4 points per game, which, if you guys don't know, a win is 3 points and a draw is 1 point. A loss is obviously 0 points. So we had one of the highest overall. We only got better in the offseason. We added a face that, if you've played FIFA for all of your life, you'll know this name. Alexandre Pato was one of the menaces of the early FIFA days and had, I think it was like 97 pace, and played for the Brazilian national team. He was over in Italy on AC Milan. He went to Chelsea in England. This is a guy that, again, has been all around the world, somehow ended up on Orlando City now, and is hungry. This guy had offers from Europe, Asia, South America, everywhere to play, and he picked here because he knows that we have something special building. And he's already scored 3 goals in our preseason games, 2 assists. Like, the guy's going to be an all-star this year. So, I mean, this team's going to be good. We got a guy out on loan right now that is looking like the truth for the U.S. national team, and that's another guy that would be the future face of the national team. His name is Daryl DK. We loaned him out to Barnsley. He scored 8 goals in 14 matches and has now exploded onto the national stage. And Orlando City actually had an offer on the table a couple weeks back for 20+ million from a top 6 Premier League club, which, for those of you guys that don't know that, it's Manchester United, Manchester City, Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea, all those main names. They were all wanting him. We didn't sell at the time. Now he's scored 4 or 5 more goals. That price tag's probably 30+ million now. So, I mean, Orlando City's sitting in a really good spot. If we end up selling him, you know, who knows who we could bring in. That literally opens the door for anyone, especially for the MLS. So
I love it. And you know, you talk about Pato, and here we are again, not to downplay it, but it's obviously another foreign superstar coming over who's been around for a while. We've seen it happen in the MLS before with Zlatan and Kaká and so many others. And while there may be a negative connotation to it, I actually don't mind it because I feel like it actually builds the game a little bit through similarity, I guess, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like you mentioned with FIFA, someone like me that might not know who.
Oh, familiarity.
Yeah, familiarity. You know, like there's a little bit of familiarity there because you know, you've heard these guys, you know who they are, and they're a big deal, whether they're 35 or 28, whatever they are. You know who they are, which makes it feel like even a bigger deal. And to be honest with you, I want more than anything for the MLS to kind of boost up and become a not Premier League, obviously, but become a more talented league, become a more competitive league to where they are able to kind of retain some of the talent at home, which hopefully in the coming years we start see more of the top players stay in the US if financial backing can happen.
That's the thing. We just need to be able to hold on to the talent we have and also attract more talent from Europe, because the more guys that see this as an opportunity rather than a retirement league, the better it is for us as a whole. And I think that stigma has really changed in the past 5 to 10 years, because I know, again, there's still some older superstars coming over, but these are not guys that are ready to retire right away. These are guys that still have at the top level many, many years left. And again, their 30s are way better than a lot of these guys that we have in the league. They're 20s. So, I mean, the class level is just a completely different thing. Like it starts, like I said, it starts at the youth level for the US. And until we start having those guys, like I mentioned, just role models, like you were talking about, you need to see guys on TV that you could see yourself being. And when we aren't in the World Cup, there's all these kids watching going, well, I don't see any Americans in here. So why would I want to do that? You know, but if you see Christian Pulisic, who's playing for Chelsea, you see him in the World Cup, score a goal, celebrate, tapping the USA badge. And he's from Hershey, Pennsylvania. That's an awesome story. That's like a, hey, maybe I could pull that off type of thing. And, we're just missing that right now. We need that connection to the players. So,
well, last two things for you. I'll do this one first. Tell me what's going on internationally. Any big storylines, Bundesliga, La Liga, EPL, Interliga here, whatever it is. I don't know, but go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say the Premier League, I think the race is over. Man City, unfortunately, has got a pretty big gap at the top. Liverpool had some pretty bad injuries this year. I think like their entire defense is completely out. But the big story really recently for soccer fans has been, obviously Messi and Ronaldo have dominated the past, 10 to 15 years, and it really hasn't been close with other players. We're finally getting to that age where they're starting to look for the next superstars. And I think the two guys that have emerged as the two biggest superstars worldwide, and actually one of them, his agent is trying to negotiate to make him the first ever £1 million per week player. Like that, absolutely insane, like per week. Essentially he would be, his name is Erling Haaland, a guy that, again, probably no one's really heard of. He plays for Borussia Dortmund. He's a Norwegian player, has exploded onto the scene. And then the other guy, a little bit more well-known because he just won the World Cup with France, Kylian Mbappe. He's only, I think, 21 years old. He's got more goals than almost anyone by that age. The dude is incredible. He's got pace for days. He's one of the fastest players I've ever seen. And he's just scoring goals at a faster rate than you can imagine. So, I mean, these two guys, it's awesome that we're already seeing kind of the torch being passed to this next generation. And at least we know we're still going to have some superstars for the future here. So we'll see.
Hell yeah, I like it. So you said Mbappe, and what was the other one?
His name is Haaland. It's like Haaland. So it's like Holland. Yeah.
Yeah, Mbappe and Haaland. All right. Well, I'm going to be looking at them on Saturday mornings, drinking my coffee, watching some EPL or Bundesliga. Yeah, that'll be that. All right. So you get put in charge of the U.S. men's national team, U.S. men's soccer federation, whatever it is. What are your top two fixes? What is the key? What are the fixes? Yep. Give it to me straight right now. I'm sending this in to the U.S. Men's Soccer Federation. You are now being interviewed for the U.S. men's position.
Yep.
You're the coach. You're the team principal. You're the general manager, whatever they're called, CEO. Fix my damn national team, Vrban.
All right. So first point I got to make, absolutely, consistency. We got to, the only way we are going to beat teams like Germany, Spain, France, all these guys that just have superstars for days that are just plug and play. It doesn't matter who those guys put on the field. They're going to be dangerous enough to win. The thing that we need to do is we got to take the guys that we have and make them familiar with each other to the point where they know each other inside and out. If we keep this team together, like I mentioned, these guys are all 17 to 23 years old, in that range. This is the golden age. If we can keep these guys together for the next 2 World Cup cycles and let them play and develop next to each other, there's no reason we shouldn't be making it to the quarterfinal stage at least. I will say that right now. If we don't make it out of the group stage with a team that we have, with superstars like we have, there's just no chance that we'll have that in the future. It's just, this is the best time right now. So
there you go. Consistency and keeping players at home. That is what we need. Jacob has joined us rocking the Orlando City soccer jersey. Look at this. I'm left out, Vrban. How much for a jersey? Get me a damn jersey, dude.
Bro, we'll get you in there. We got a brand new beautiful kit this year. I'm wearing one of the older ones because I'm saving the other one for Friday because we have our casual jersey Fridays in the office here.
What about the Orlando Pride solar system jersey?
Dude,
I need that.
For those of you guys that didn't see that, that's actually cooler than the men's team. Like they sent the kit to outer space, which is awesome in the first place, but it's honestly one of the most like cool design kits. Like I think the Nike side for the NWSL, the women's league, they have a lot more free reign over the design of the jersey. So nothing against Adidas, but like it's definitely better or more creative for sure.
I like it. Well, Vrban, I know you got to get running for whatever reason. You have a hair appointment. I don't, your hair looks fine. You obviously just don't want to talk to us about soccer.
He's wearing a hat.
Yeah, you just throw a hat on, dude. Come on. Come on, look at this.
Going.
You got a lot of lettuce up there.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll let you go. Jacob and I will close this episode out. But Vrban, thank you for being here. Thank you for talking soccer. Fans listening, Kyle Vrban, the go-to plug for all things soccer. And if you're in Orlando, you want tickets, you want to go to some games, MLS is starting up, like he mentioned, Atlanta. Reach out to Kyle Vrban for tickets. Overwhelm him with requests and orders. He'll get you the best seats in the house to watch one of the best teams in the MLS. Vrban, thanks for being here, man.
No problem, man. If you guys want me to do like smaller segments where I just give some updates, or if anyone wants to learn more about the game, more than happy to help some fans out here.
We might, you know what? We might need that. We might need Soccer Talk with Vrban, just 10-minute updates on YouTube. We'll just create a playlist.
Soccer tutorials with Vrban. This guy got my free kick on point.
Yeah, man. I was gonna say we can put a little real life element into that, just be a little entertaining. So
what's on the back of your jersey, by the way?
What?
Whose jersey is that?
Oh, it's Nani.
Oh, Nani. Oh, I've never heard of him. But have you seen who's on the back of my jersey?
Oh, superstar Jacob Yurtical, Orlando City superstar.
Shout out to Vrban for that one.
No problem, guys. I'll see you later.
See ya, Jacob. So Vrban and I, we went through the men's soccer, U.S. men's national team, talked a little bit of MLS, talked about Orlando City's resurgence, but obviously, you and I, both sports fans, we know very well the disappointment that has been U.S. men's soccer over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think what's crazy is what was it, the last World Cup? You probably have already talked about this, that we didn't make it, or has it been 2 World Cups now?
Vrban actually mentioned that, okay, so this is the 3rd Olympic cycle we've missed, and then, yeah, I think 2 World Cups, because I think the last one would have been 2014?
Yeah, 2014 and then 2018.
Yeah, so it's been some time since they've competed. I meant to ask Vrban this. I want to just know when the U.S. men's national team is going to compete in a competitive match again. Like, not a friendly. When am I going to be able to watch one of their games and say, okay, this game matters?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy is like you talk about missing the Olympics. It speaks volumes for someone like us that was never even on my radar, that you play soccer in the Olympics, because we haven't really been in it, I guess. I know the women's team they beat Japan, who I think was the previous Olympic champion. Last time I remember.
Yeah. No, it was. It's usually like the U.S. women's versus the U.S. Or against the Japanese women national team. So
yep.
I feel like the sport at the women's level may not be as much parity, I guess would be the word for it. I don't know 100%, but I do feel, and maybe it's just because the U.S. women's is just so dominant, and honestly, just more dominant than the men at their respective sports. It's more fun to pull for the U.S. women's team at this point.
I know, and what sucks is like the women's team has been so good. And it's almost like for people that are fans of like the Golden State Warriors at the time that they're winning and the New England Patriots, you almost start to lose or take it for granted because of how dominant they've been in the Women's World Cup and the women's scene. And the men's team, any little thing they do gets so much excitement because they haven't been doing that for us, where it's almost like if the women win a World Cup or win a championship or win something, we're like excited, we're happy, but we're not nearly as excited because they've just been dominant for a long time. Where the men, they could get into the World Cup at this point, and we'd be like throwing parades, like, oh my gosh, we made it to the World Cup. Maybe make jokes about getting like an early exit.
Yeah.
But it's crazy that at this time, a sport that you play these major competitions every like 4 years, how different the team is. Like I was looking at the roster, and I think everyone knows about Christian Pulisic or I so who after that, if you're a casual fan, do you start to think of? Because I remember when we had Josie's still on the team. I know that, but we had people like Dempsey, Landon Donovan, we
Michael
had
Bradley.
Tim Howard, Michael Brad. We had all these guys, and we saw some young guys like Yedlin or Julian Green or something in the last World Cup we were in. But now I look at that, I'm like, well, where are those guys? Well, we still moved on from them even. So it's crazy with a sport that has such a huge gap between major championship like competitions.
Mm-hmm.
Like a guy could compete in one, and then maybe if they miss one more, by the time they
Yeah.
get back, they're already like retired.
And I think that's what's like so crazy to me is because it is every 4 years, whether it's the Olympics or the World Cup, you would think that there would be extra stress put on the success of the team in general. You would think, okay, we have one shot every 4 years to do this. And the fact that they haven't been able to get there or put the pieces together, I think that's what's frustrating for me as a sports fan, because we have the facilities, we have all, the technology and the tracking and, the athleticism is there, whatever. It's like, like Vrban said, there's no consistency. We can't get people playing on the same page. And then you look at the talent pool, it's difficult to generate younger talent for the future teams if there's no one on TV to watch and idolize or, want to be the next big thing for the national team. And, quite honestly, it's embarrassing. I feel like it's the only sport at the men's level that the U.S. trails way behind a lot of other countries. I know basketball, America leads, NHL, America leads. Well, granted, the Canadian teams, there's like 8 Canadian teams that help us with that. But, you look at all these sports, football, basketball, baseball, even like, we lead all these sports. And then, it comes down to soccer. And I asked Vrban, is it a result of just people being exhausted by other sports that they just simply can't get into a fifth sport? They can't get into it because there's so many other sports that just consume their time.
Well, in my opinion, and it's like I'm not a huge soccer expert. I do like soccer. I've played a little bit, but because in other countries soccer is the premier sport, when you grow up and you're athletic, people like the people that have the most athleticism in that country likely are playing soccer and really putting focus into that. Here we have football is probably number one, baseball is America's pastime. The NBA is really big here. Like, so we have 3 major sports, and now you say the NHL. So really 4 major sports before you even start to sniff soccer, that your best athletes are going into. Maybe there's plenty of kids getting into soccer nowadays, but we're talking about your premier athletes that grow up here are going into one of those sports. And so it makes it tough to develop a really good team if it's like the 5th best sport. I tend to think that if you want to get into soccer, it's one of the easiest ones to watch because it's going to be almost a finite 2 hours.
Yeah.
You're not going to waste time watching extra innings, or you're not going to watch like double overtimes in basketball, which can be fun. You're not going to watch 3-4 hour football games. Like, soccer, if it starts at this time, about 2 hours later is when it ends. So it's very easy to watch. It's probably easy to work because I know Vrban works it. So probably not easy.
Yeah,
to work. I should say you have a better understanding of the time period of working it. But
in Vrban even touched on that too. And I think just from a casual fan standpoint, even a young kid, with struggles with attention spans and stuff going on, if you're a young kid and you're watching soccer or you're a teenager, you're glued to the TV for 45 straight minutes with nonstop action. So, if you're a family sitting at home watching soccer, whatever the case is, you don't have to worry about the commercials, making you or get distracted, lose attention, stuff like that. So I think I think he had mentioned the men's senior team is trending in the right direction. It's a disappointment about the U23 team. Quite frankly, it's an embarrassment. But that was us getting as deep into soccer as we possibly can. And Jacob, I appreciate you jumping on. I mean, I know we got some of our own football coming up here in a few weeks. We're gearing up this Thursday, possibly Friday morning. We have a great interview actually from a former defensive backs assistant at Clemson, Jacksonville native Xavier Brewer. He is currently the DB's coach at ULM, University of Louisiana Monroe. We will get an updated interview with him for episode 81 will be the recorded interview. We'll get another one with him down the road. And then next Monday, 2 weeks away from draft week, we will actually be doing a live stream mock draft with the NFL panel. We'll get some friends on. We'll get some guests on to talk Buccaneers, Miami Dolphins. Hell, if you're listening to this or you're watching this and you're a fan of a team, let us know. We'll bring you on for whatever picks. If you want to make a pick for your team, go for it. We'll have you on. We can do that. It doesn't matter. And if you're listening to this, comment below any topics that you might want us to touch on in future episodes. If you know anyone we should interview, topics that we can discuss, debate, have fun with, please put those below. Go follow us on Instagram. Go follow us on Twitter as well. And shout out to our sponsors, Shores Pub Mandarin, Strings Sports Brewery up north of downtown Jacksonville, and Cimarron Golf Club. Jacob, I notice you're not wearing the Poojie Podcast merch right now, but fans,
Well, I had to rep my Orlando City.
I can't. I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. It looks good. It's a great jersey.
It is an amazing jersey.
PoojiePodshop.com. Use code PODFAN for 15% off. Or if you want even better discounts, participate in some of our online contests via Instagram and Twitter. We give away dollars off, $10, $50 off. Hell, holding one away with $50 off to the podcast shop to get some merch. You can as well. But until next time, thanks for tuning into episode 80 of the Poojie Podcast. Jacob, thanks for jumping on. And thank you again to Vrban. And until next time, go and make this world a better place. Take care.
How can I be the man when you're the man? How can I be the man when you're the man? How can I be the man when you're the man?